I still remember sitting in a bar when I watched a man lose a woman in under 3 sentences. She leaned in, eyes still holding curiosity. He said something with too much softness, then followed it with a justification, then worst of all a plea. Her face didn't change much. That's what made it brutal. The same half smile, the same nod. But behind her gaze, something had been switched off. Not anger, not sadness. Just a closing. A quiet shutting of the door, and he didn't even realize it. He kept talking, thinking words could buy back what posture had already sold. That's when it hit me. You don't lose a woman when she disagrees with you. You lose her when she doesn't believe you believe yourself. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to stop bleeding respect by convincing instead of walking. There's a moment in every man's life when he says too much. Not too much in volume, but too much in need. It's the moment you start explaining yourself not because you're misunderstood, but because you're afraid of being left. You try to fill the silence between her raised eyebrow and your unspoken doubt with proof. Proof that you're right. Proof that you're a good guy. Proof that you're not like the last one. But here's the truth: the second you try to prove, you've already lost. Because the masculine doesn't prove, it embodies. And when you abandon that for persuasion, you go from presence to performance. You're no longer the mountain. You're the weatherman describing the mountain to her in hopes that she believes it's tall. She feels it instantly. That shift from steadiness to spin, from core to calculation. You might not see it, but she does. It's in your tone. The way your eyes seek hers for reassurance. The way your words get just a little too soft. Your smile a little too eager. She's not listening to the content. She's watching the current behind it. And when that current is need, her body closes. Respect dries up like water under sun. Because deep down, she doesn't want to be the judge of your worth. She wants to feel it without being asked. A man once said to me, "But I just want her to understand me." No, you don't. You want her to agree with you. You want her to validate the thing you're not sure of in yourself. And here's the dagger: no one can give you what you're not willing to anchor alone. She'll listen. She might even smile. But inside, she's filing you into the cabinet of men who are still asking for permission to exist. And once you're in that drawer, like it's nearly impossible to crawl out. Convincing is the opposite of power. It reeks of desperation, even when dressed in logic. You say, "I just want to be clear." But what you mean is, "I'm afraid she's slipping away, and I don't know how to hold her without words." You want to keep her with argument. But argument never kept anyone. Certainty does. Silence does. The unshakable stillness of a man who says what he means, then watches not because he doesn't care, but because he knows the world turns, with or without her orbit. You're not her lawyer. You're not on trial. You're either the man whose gravity pulls her closer, or the man whose words reveal that gravity was never real. That's the knife edge you live on. And it's better to bleed on that edge than to live as a man who persuades. You might say, "But if I don't explain myself, she'll get the wrong idea." Maybe. Maybe she'll think you're cold, or arrogant, or distant. But the irony is, if she respects you, she'll ask. If she doesn't respect you, she won't care about your explanation anyway. So all that verbal dancing you're doing, it's for someone who already decided to sit down. There's something magnetic about a man who lets silence speak for him. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of presence. The kind of man who can say no and mean it. The kind of man who can be misunderstood and not flinch. That kind of man makes a woman lean in, not because he's mysterious, but because he's solid. Because he doesn't chase her interpretation, he stands in his own. That's what kills her attraction when you try to convince. Not the topic, not the content, but the collapse of your spine when challenged. You become a boy again, seeking the teacher's approval. She doesn't want to raise a boy. She wants to feel a man's gravity, and gravity doesn't explain itself. It simply holds everything in orbit or lets it go. And you need to let go. Of the urge to chase her understanding, of the impulse to explain your soul until it sounds palatable, of the fantasy that if you just say it the right way, she'll finally stay. She doesn't stay because of your words. She stays because of your weight. That's the tragedy. Most men think they lost her because of what they said, but they lost her because they needed to say it. The strongest posture is saying nothing, because nothing else needs to be said. She's not testing your vocabulary. She's testing your center. Every raised eyebrow, every moment of withdrawal, every, I don't know, is not an invitation for explanation. It's an invitation for embodiment. She wants to see if you flinch. If you break your own code the moment her warmth wavers, and most men do. They panic. They rush to soften their edges. They abandon their stance in favor of comfort. They try to make her feel better, thinking that making her feel good is the same as making her feel safe. But they're wrong. Because a woman doesn't feel safe with a man who folds under pressure, she doesn't want to feel better. She wants to feel you unshaken, unyielding, even when her emotions swirl like storms. This is the paradox. The more you try to soothe her with words, the more she feels alone. Because now she's the strong one. Now she's leading the dance. And while part of her might enjoy the control, the deeper part of her, the part that aches for masculine presence, feels abandoned. You gave her your power, thinking it was kindness. But it was fear dressed in diplomacy. And it always starts the same way. A slight shift in her tone, a subtle withdrawal. Maybe she's colder. Maybe she's less responsive. Maybe she questions something you did, and instead of letting her live in her own weather system, you go chasing it. You try to fix her mood, explain your actions, rewrite the narrative. You forget that the sun never begs the clouds to leave. It just keeps burning. And eventually, the clouds move on. The moment you try to convince her is the moment you stop being the sun. You become the rain. You become the fog. You become the very thing you were trying to pull her out of. And she feels it. She feels the shift from grounded man to approval seeker. She doesn't say it out loud. She just starts respecting you less. It's subtle at first. Less eye contact, less touch, fewer questions. And then, one day, she doesn't look at you the same. Not because she's angry, but because you're no longer the man she can lean on. You've made her the center, and no woman wants to be the center of a man who can't stand alone. You need to kill the instinct to chase her mind. Kill it. Starve it. Because it's a trap. Her mind will never give you the respect you're trying to earn. Her body knows before her logic does. Respect is visceral. It's ancient. It's not decided, it's felt. And it's felt in the stillness of your gaze, the calm of your breath, the refusal to bend just because she's uncomfortable. You are not a therapist. You are not a spokesperson for your intentions. You are a man. And a man doesn't convince, he chooses. She can feel the difference between a man who says, "I understand," because he actually does, and one who says it hoping to keep her from walking. And when it's the second, she doesn't walk immediately. She tests harder. She pulls back more. She sees if there's anything left behind the performance. And when she finds there's not, when she finds only apologies and strategy and softness where there should be steel, her respect dies quietly. You might still be in her life. She might still sleep beside you. But she's already gone. And what do most men do then? They try even harder. They double down on the convincing. They buy gifts. They write long texts. They tell her how much she means to them. They cry. They confess. They think vulnerability will save them. But they forget vulnerability without backbone is just exposure. And exposure without power is pitiful. It's not masculine. It's not attractive. It's just noise. And the more noise you make, the further she drifts. Not because she's cruel, but because her biology is screaming for a man who can hold himself when no one else will. You want her to respect you. Then walk through her storms without needing an umbrella. Let her moods crash. Let her words bite. Let her tension rise. And don't chase it. Don't fix it. Don't explain yourself like a politician trying to win back votes. Just stand. Just be. And let your energy say what your mouth never could. I don't need you to believe me. I am what I am. Take it or leave it. Most men can't do that. They crumble. They reach for tactics. They ask their friends what to say. They read articles about the 5 ways to make her trust you again. And every word they read digs their grave a little deeper. Because they're still trying to do something to get her back. But a real man knows you don't do your way into respect. You become it. Quietly, consistently, and without permission. And here's the brutal truth. If she leaves because you stop convincing her, let her. That's the only way you win. That's the only way you find a woman who feels your power without needing a sales pitch. The right woman doesn't need you to explain your worth. She just feels it. But she'll never feel it if you don't. You've been taught that words are tools. That if you string them together just right, if you hit that perfect rhythm between vulnerability and logic, you can pull her back. But a woman's respect doesn't respond to tools. It responds to tension. The right kind of tension. The kind that says, I'll hold this space even if you run. And most men can't hold it. The silence becomes unbearable. Her doubt becomes a dagger. And so you start talking, not to clarify, but to escape the heat. But that heat is where everything true is forged. And if you leave it too soon, you remain soft. Not tender, not open, just weak. There's a kind of stillness that unnerves her at first. The kind of stillness that comes from a man who refuses to chase. It makes her question herself, makes her feel her own storm more vividly. That's when her instincts come alive. That's when she looks again not at your words, but at your spine. Why isn't he reacting? Why isn't he trying to save this? And the deeper part of her feels that magnetic, ancient force, the presence of a man who will not be moved by anything except his own truth. This is the masculine mystery. You don't build respect by pulling her closer. You build it by being willing to let her go, and not in that cheesy, pretend, pickup artist way where you fake walk away. No, you really let go. You grieve in private. You bleed without spectacle. And you return not to her, but to yourself. Every man has to walk through that fire. The fire of rejection without pleading, of misunderstanding without over-explaining, of abandonment without collapse. You think respect is about being liked, but the truth is, most men who are respected are also misunderstood, misread, even hated, because they don't exist to be decoded. They don't put their insides on a plate just so she'll nod and say, I get it now. They speak what they mean. Then they leave space, not emptiness space. The kind of space that makes a woman reflect, not react. And in that space, something rare happens. She meets herself. And if your energy is true, she will return. But she won't return because of what you said. She'll return because of what you didn't. The minute you try to pull her toward your side, you switch roles. You make her the one with the gravity, and you become the satellite. A man can orbit a woman. Yes, but only if his core stays intact. The second you deviate from your center to win her approval, you're no longer a man. You're a tactic, and tactics don't turn her on. That's the difference between attraction and negotiation. When you try to convince her, you've already admitted you don't believe your own value. She can smell it, hear it, feel it. You could be saying all the right things, but if the energy is rooted in fear, she will not stay. She can't. It's a biological impossibility. Her nervous system will begin to recoil. Her eyes will drift. Her desire will evaporate because she doesn't want words. She wants evidence. Not spoken evidence, embodied evidence. You can't talk your way into that. You have to become it. You have to be the man who doesn't flinch when misunderstood, who doesn't grasp when ignored, who doesn't collapse when challenged, because that's what creates the kind of respect that makes her stay up at night thinking about you. Not because you explained yourself into her heart, but because you stayed standing when every other man would have begged. Let that sink in. She doesn't remember your reasons. She remembers your posture. She remembers how you made her feel when things got hard. Not how you pleaded, but how you didn't. Not how you chased, but how you waited with dignity. And maybe that's the hardest thing you'll ever do. To be doubted and still choose silence. To be pushed away and still stand tall. To be misunderstood and still refuse to prove. Because the truth is, the man who convinces dies a little every time she doesn't believe him. But the man who embodies, he doesn't die. He just sharpens, grows quieter, denser, more unshakable, until one day, she comes back not to a man still waiting, but to a man who no longer needs her return. And that's when you win. But it only happens when you stop trying to be understood. The real tragedy is how many men never learn this. They spend years perfecting their arguments, writing paragraphs in their heads for a moment that never comes. They rehearse explanations, craft careful apologies, build castles made of words hoping she'll walk through the front gate and see the truth he's trying so hard to show her. But here's the brutal, throat-closing truth: the more you build your words like a shelter, the more she sees them as a cage. Not for her, for you. Because when a man hides behind his reasons, his past, his sensitivity, he isn't inviting her into his world. He's revealing he has no world. Just defense, just desire, just empty scaffolding that needs her to hold it up. You think she wants to hear your why? But what she really wants is to feel that you'll survive her absence. That your spine is not up for negotiation. That you are not a boy trying to explain why you broke the vase, hoping not to be punished. But a man who stands surrounded by shattered glass, unmoved, not cold, not cruel, just unmoved. Because your truth does not change based on how she reacts to it. The moment she feels it, not hears it, something deep in her shifts, and whether she leaves or stays, that shift will haunt her. Because she will finally have seen something most women never do, a man who is governed by something deeper than her mood. That's where you live now, if you dare. In that silence, in that sovereignty, it's not glamorous, it's not loud. No one applauds you for it. There's no dopamine rush from holding your frame while she storms. There's just the long, aching echo of your own heartbeat. And the question, do I believe myself? Not does she believe me, do I? Because if you don't, nothing you say will land. Your words will be wires without current. You could scream the truth and she still wouldn't feel it. Because truth isn't in the script. It's in the stance. The way you hold your eyes. The way you let go. The way you don't chase. That's the voltage she responds to. That's the signal she can't ignore, no matter how much she wants to. And yet, most men will never make it past that threshold. They'll break in the waiting. Their hands will itch for the phone. Their voice will beg to be heard. Their pride will scream. Just say something, just make her understand. But every time you act on that scream, you trade power for proximity. You might get her body back for a night. You might get a thank you for opening up. But you won't get her soul. Because her soul only responds to stillness, to unwavering presence, to the rare, unmistakable frequency of a man who could explain but won't. Not because he's withholding, but because he doesn't need to. You don't need to explain a mountain. You don't need to argue the sun into shining. You don't need to defend gravity. These things just are. That's the kind of man you must become. The kind who just is, and from that place, let her come. Let her wrestle. Let her doubt. Let her misread. You don't move. You don't perform. You don't correct. You stay. Because staying doesn't mean standing still in a relationship. Staying means not betraying yourself in the storm. Staying means holding your line while everything around you trembles for attention. Staying means that even if she walks away, you don't chase with your tongue hanging out like a dog begging for a treat. You don't convert your manhood into a marketing pitch. You accept her leaving. You accept her confusion. You accept her silence, and then, with whatever fragments remain, you walk into the dark and build something deeper. Not louder, not flashier, just deeper. So that next time, your presence alone says everything you once tried to squeeze into a paragraph. That's the man she respects. Not the one who talks her into staying, but the one she can't forget, because he didn't need to.